kept thinking about the strange rustling they had heard earlier. What if it wasn't an animal? What if it was something else? Something watching them? Her thoughts were interrupted by a low, guttural growl coming from the darkness outside. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to call out to the others, but fear kept her silent. Meanwhile, Jake, who had always prided himself on being the toughest of the group, was also wide awake. He heard the growl too, and felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He reached for his flashlight and shone it around his tent, but the beam only revealed shadows and more shadows. "Get a grip," he whispered to himself, forcing his mind to calm down. "It's just your imagination." But as the night wore on, the sounds grew more frequent and more disturbing. Footsteps crunching through the underbrush, low whispers that seemed to come from all directions, and the constant unnerving feeling of being watched. In the tent she shared with Emily, Sarah clung to her friend, trying to find comfort in the familiar. "Do you think we should wake the others?" she whispered. Emily nodded, her voice trembling. "Yeah, let's wake them up. Something's not right." They emerged from their tents, waking Sam, Jake, and Chris. The group gathered around the dying campfire, their faces pale in the dim light. "Did you guys hear that?" Chris asked, his usual humor replaced by genuine fear. "Yeah, we all heard it," Sam replied, his voice tense. "Something's out there. We need to stay together." They sat around the campfire, listening intently to the sounds of the forest. The growls and whispers continued, growing louder and more menacing. The night seemed to stretch on forever, each minute feeling like an hour. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, the noises ceased. The forest fell silent once more, but the group knew that the peace was temporary. Whatever was out there was not gone. It was merely biding its time. "We need to figure out what's going on," Sam said, his resolve hardening. "We can't just sit here and wait for something to happen. Let's explore the area today."